Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Millie and today I am really excited. This is the first video in a series I'd like to do about gardening. Now I've done literally hundreds of videos on gardening, but I wanted to do some videos that covered more topics in depth on gardening and do them in a series so that you can watch along with the series and work along with me. So the series is more for beginners, but it will also work for more advanced gardeners. And we're going to cover in detail every aspect of gardening. Now, I sat down to write down some topics and came up with 54 topics that I would like to cover. I know there's many more topics in gardening that you can cover, and this is only going to encompass vegetable gardening. And I put that topic list down in the description so you can kind of see what we're going to cover. And I figured if I do 2 of these videos a week, it'll take us into June. And I'll do them in sequence of what I do while I'm gardening so that you can follow along with me and see what needs to be done. Now today's video is going to cover the very first topic of gardening and the one that you need to do before you start your gardening. And that's to think about why you want to garden. So I'm first going to tell you a little bit about myself and then take you on a walk around my property and discuss why I decided I wanted to garden. I started gardening in Southern California. My now ex-husband had purchased a home just before we got married as a surprise for me. I didn't get a chance to help choose the property, but on that property there were some fruit trees. There were some orange trees and a lemon tree and some peach trees. And number one, I wanted to learn how to keep those alive. And then number two, my mom had always had a garden and I wanted some tomatoes. So I went into that garden the very first spring that we lived there and planted 2 tomatoes. No ground preparation or anything. I had no knowledge of gardening other than what my mom had taught me, which was basically weeding and that I hated it. And I went and plopped those 2 tomatoes in the ground and they both died. Got no tomatoes that year, but that sparked a passion. That was in 1992 and this is 2022. So that's a lot of years of gardening and a lot of years of passion that it sparked. So when I first started gardening back then, I wanted tomatoes. That's why I started gardening. When I moved here to Utah, I had a little bit of a different desire. Let me go show you outside what I had. I'll show you a few pictures of before and after of my house, and then I will discuss what my needs were when we moved here. So here we are in my backyard, and this is what it looks like now, and I'll see if I can find a picture of what it looked like before. When I first moved here, I was going through a divorce. I had 3 young kids, 3 dogs, and I knew at that time that I loved gardening. Now, gardening is where my passion lies. It's where I get peace. It's where I ground myself. And I knew that I needed to build a place where I could grow vegetables and herbs and all sorts of things as soon as I moved in. So my purpose at that time was to be able to grow things to eat, obviously, but more so that I could have a place to come and enjoy myself. And I knew that I wasn't going to have as much time as I had had in California. I was a stay-at-home mom in California. When I moved here, we had sold our house in California in the end of 2006. And if you know anything about the economy at that time, we sold our home for top price. We had bought that house. My ex-husband had bought the house in 91. We were married at the end of 91. So we had a lot of equity in that house. So I came here and had enough money to be able to redo the landscape after I bought the house. Now, I knew that I wasn't going to have as much time as I had back in California. I was going to need to work full-time. I had about 6 months before I was going to need to work full-time. And so I needed to build a garden that was going to be as low maintenance as possible. So I put in raised beds and put in automatic irrigation, and that is how I started my garden. Now, as I said, my needs were for a place of peace, a place to grow vegetables, a place to be able to come and have a low maintenance place to be able to just kind of regroup after work and while I was raising my kids. I also needed a place where my kids could help me garden and so that they could be outside. That's always been extremely important to me. I wanted my kids to always know where their food came from and know how to grow it. And my kids are grown and gone, and I've accomplished that. They know how to garden. They know how to produce their own food. Now, my needs are going to be different than your needs. So what you need to do, and I challenge you to do that this week, is go out onto your property look at it and then do some deep self-reflection. What do you need from a garden? Why do you want to garden? Is it for peace? Do you want to be the one to grow all the food that your family eats? Or do you just like to be in nature? Do you want to teach your children about gardening? You've got to think about that first. Look at your property and see which areas you have so that you can accomplish those goals. Now, there are other things you need to do during this time frame while you're thinking about starting a garden. You need to take stock on what you have actually right now. What are your finances? What does your property look like? Do you have an area on your property that would be good for gardening? And what kind of help and energy do you have? So you may need to start small because you have a small place, or you may not have that much time or energy. You know, how many people do you have that are going to help you? Is it just going to be you? Think about those things. What is your knowledge now? Do you have any skills that will be helpful in gardening? Or are you going to need to learn a lot of different things? Now, another thing I'd like to talk about is patience. Starting small is good, especially if you're learning everything new for the first time. My first thing was just one tomato. That was my first garden for the first year. If I'd have tried more, I probably would have not continued gardening. And now I have an entire property that is full of vegetables. I work 2 full-time jobs. I took care of this entire property while I had my kids and was working full-time as a single mom. So there are different levels of energy, there are different needs, and I challenge you to go out and look at that. Now, there's one other thing you need to look at, and I don't hear very many people talking about that in the gardening world, and I want to go show you a couple of things and show you what else you need to think about. Now, we're on my front porch, and I hope the sun isn't too bright, but if you look way past those houses, you'll see a lake in the distance. Now, what I'd like to talk to you about now is the geology of where you live. It is actually important. It can actually help you quite a bit in your gardening to know what your property is built on. So I live in Utah, zone 6/7, and that is Utah Lake over there. My house is sitting, let me show you what's behind my house. If you look up there, you can see where the snow is. That's a mountain. That's the Wasatch Front in the back. And there's a little bench right there in the front. The top of that bench, a few hundred feet above my house, was the beach of an old lake, Lake Bonneville. So it helps to know that this is an old lake because it helps me understand the ground that I'm on. So let me show you what my native soil looks like. Now this right here is my native soil. I have huge rocks, big rocks, little rocks, lots of rocks, and some clay. And planting garden vegetables into this kind of soil is extremely difficult work. There's not going to be a lot of success without some serious amending. Now I'm starting to freeze a little bit. It's quite cold out here, and as you saw, I forgot to bring out my jacket. Let's head back inside and talk a little bit more about this. Okay, it feels a little bit better in here. I was getting pretty cold. So before this area was under Lake Bonneville, it was actually under a really shallow sea. So this is way, way back, eons ago, but it was a shallow sea. And it was pretty flat. Now the mountains were formed when the tectonic plates near the coast of California crashed into each other and one subducted under. As one plate went under another plate, it forced wrinkles in the landmass. And the mountains here in Utah are remnants of that. So there was an inland sea with lots of shellfish and salt and all sorts of stuff like that that got uplifted. And now we have a lot of lime deposits in our mountains. So the mountains have a lot of lime deposits. The ground down here that was below the ocean has a lot of lime deposits. That means our soils are very alkaline, and there's not a lot we can do about it. The water that we get comes from the snow runoff from the mountains behind my house. So even the water is alkaline here. So why is that important? Well, number one, I know what I have to deal with in my soil. It's rocky because it was a lake bed and the waves were eroding the rocks off the mountains. It's alkaline soil and the water is going to be alkaline. So knowing the geology really actually helps you understand what you're working with, and you can choose plants and choose to garden in a way that works for you rather than against you. That's why I have raised beds. Now, you need to look at your own property. See if you can figure out what the geology, the ancient geology of your property was. In California, it was a totally different story. I lived near Camarillo and I lived in Ventura County. That area is well known for its agriculture. It's a very, very, very old, ancient volcanic area where it's so ancient that the volcanoes have worn down quite a bit. The soil is deep, it's rich volcanic soil and excellent, excellent for agriculture. Totally different here. These mountains are newer and the rock hasn't worn down as much. It's not volcanic soil, it's more limestone. So knowing the geology of the area where you're at really will help you to understand how to work with your property. So I challenge you this week to go look at your property and take stock of what you have. Look at the geology of your area, see what you're going to need to be able to do to work with your property rather than against your property, and then ask those deep questions. Why do you want to garden? How much energy do you have? Do you have anybody to help you? What skills do you have and what skills are you going to have to learn? Once you've done all that, we're going to come back and I'm going to do another video and talk about what to grow. Now I'm going to be doing videos 3 days a week like I always have. I always do them on Sunday mornings, Wednesday mornings, and Friday mornings. And Sundays and Fridays are going to be this series. Wednesdays are just going to be whatever other videos I'd like to do. I do a lot of succulent growing. I grow veggies indoors, and there's a lot of different things that we can talk about on Wednesdays. So next Friday will be the next video, and as I said, it'll be about what you can grow. And if you would like to see the topics of each video that I'm going to make, you can look down in the description. I'm also going to create a playlist that I will link up here, and that is where I will store all the videos that I make for this series. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. I hope you're excited about learning how to garden, and I hope you actually participate with me. And let me know down in the comments, is this your first garden? What are the things that would be the most helpful for you to learn in gardening? Now, if this video has been helpful to you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share it with your friends because that helps me out a lot. And then go have a wonderful garden